Erica Zill here. So today I wanted to pop on and talk about getting back into your exercise routine postpartum. I know there's a lot of questions that I get about when can I, get back into exercise? Can I just start doing what I was doing, before I got pregnant? Like so many questions, right? And sometimes we go to our doctors and they don't always fully know exactly, they say, oh yeah, just, resume your exercise routine at your 6-week checkup, right? That's kind of the typical thing, right? We wait till our 6-week checkup. But here's the thing, there's so much that we can be doing in those 6 weeks after we have a baby that are very kind and gentle and healing towards our bodies. And specifically because I work with so many pregnant moms, really teaching her how to be stronger during pregnancy, how to prepare her core. We do all of this work to help prepare our body, not only for the rest of pregnancy, but for birth, for recovery postpartum, and also for motherhood, right? Because it takes a lot of strength and energy. And so if we wait 6 weeks and we don't do much of any movement in those first 6 weeks, then we can lose a lot of strength. So I always encourage moms, where do we start? Is starting with waking up our pelvic floor. Okay, and re-strengthening our pelvic floor in the correct way, because there's so many times, and a lot of times it's taught, maybe have your doctor that says start doing your Kegels right away. If any of you have listened to my Core Connections podcast where I talked all about Kegels, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I would highly recommend it. I can put the link below after we get off of this, but in short, I don't recommend using the word Kegels to wake up and strengthen your pelvic floor, because so many times it's just addressing more the front and middle portion of our pelvic floor, and so many times we think the pelvic floor is like a quarter size, right? When the reality of it, I like to explain the pelvic floor from a visual perspective as like a diamond at the base of our pelvis. So when we can start to visualize that it's actually a lot more space, and we have all this fascia and all these fascial layers in our pelvic floor and in the base of our pelvis, we start to understand like, oh, there's so much more to it, right? So we can do this with breath work, right? Just simple breath work. So I need to just practice even breathing into our belly, into our pelvis, releasing and relaxing, which I teach you ladies during pregnancy, right? So we're gonna do a little bit of this postpartum. And then we start to reconnect from the base of the pelvic floor, those 4 points, lightly drawing together and lightly lengthening and zipping all the way up. Right, so if you do as simple as just starting to wake up our pelvic floor, starting to wake up our deep core, you're already moving in the right direction. Now, let's think about movement that you're doing in those first several weeks with a newborn baby. And many of you probably also have a toddler too. So it's not like we're not moving in those first 6 weeks, right? And I'm all for, allowing your body to rest and heal and bond with baby. Absolutely. I'm not ever saying not to do that. Absolutely. Please do all of that you can. But when we turn a little bit of focus on our body, right, waking up our pelvic floor and focusing on our posture, right? So when you're nursing a baby, it's really important when they say bring baby to you versus you bringing, your body to baby, because when you do that and we're rounded forward like this a lot, right, it really can lead to that neck and back pain, and it actually shuts off your pelvic floor too, because when we sit a lot, that really does wonders for shutting off our pelvic floor. So we've got to be aware of like the amount that you are sitting, right? So try to balance that out, that go for a little walk each day. Maybe you go for 3 little walks each day, and maybe they're each like 10 minutes. And maybe, especially in the beginning, you're like, Erica, oh my gosh, I go for a walk and I feel like I'm walking so slow. That is okay, and that is 100% normal, right? But just getting some light movement can be so good for so many reasons. So good for just our mental aspect, right, postpartum. Then you are starting to regain strength. It's good for our digestion, right? So much stagnation has taken place when we're pregnant because our organs were shoved way up underneath our ribs, and now once baby is born, everything shifts and settles down, right? So the digestion piece that we're now dealing with, right? And depending on whether you had a vaginal birth or a cesarean, right, those two make a difference as well. So here's the thing I want to share though, between a vaginal and a cesarean birth. Everything that I talk about applies to every woman. It does not matter what type of a birth you had. I do not separate them out. The only difference is that you have a little bit different of a recovery if you've had a cesarean birth, because you have major surgery that you had. So you have to allow that little bit of extra healing time. Now, a lot of doctors will tell you still get up and want you moving a little bit, because that can instill healing. Right? Yeah, we just have to be cautious that we don't overdo it. So I really, really want to talk here about making sure we do not overdo our exercise, because I get a lot of moms in my world because I've done my prenatal program, and it's just like, Erica, and I hear this from my moms even with C-sections, which is amazing and blows my mind still that I continue to hear this from a lot of moms. They're like, Erica, I had my baby 2 weeks ago and I feel amazing, right? Like I'm feeling my pelvic floor again, my core feels great. Even with the cesarean, she might be saying like, well, I didn't need any pain medications. I healed so well from that. And I know you've said we can't do structured exercise, right? We're not lifting weights, we're not doing anything intense, but I'm ready for a little bit more, right? So we can start to do a little bit of light movement, right? And that's why I love, and that's why I designed my core rehab program, right? It's there, it's so gentle, so healing for the body, that I will have some moms join as soon as at 2, 3, or even 4 weeks postpartum. But keep in mind, when you are starting, right, we're always listening to our body and we're taking our time. That is the most important thing, ladies, as we go to get back into our movement practice. Whether you're doing core rehab with me, whether you're doing another program, or whether you're doing your own program and you're gradually working your way back into your exercise and workout program, we have to take our time and be patient. Even if your body feels like absolutely amazing, and I hope it does, you still have to mentally remind yourself like, oh, there's still a lot of healing taking place, right? With a first baby, your uterus takes a good six or so weeks for it to go all the way back down to its normal size. And with every baby after that, it can take a little bit longer. The other thing we have to be aware of is relaxin in our body. And relaxin can stay in our body for a good 6 months postpartum, ladies. Say that again, 6 months postpartum. So we really need to be aware of what we're having and asking of our early postpartum body to do, especially when we're still loosey-goosey in our joints and our pelvis and all of it. Even if you're someone who's super strong and super fit, right? And even all my clients that I work with and train, I'm like, we still go with caution, even as I'm gradually increasing her exercise. So that's a really, really big important thing when it comes to the intensity. It has to be gradual. It has to be gradual. We have to really learn to listen to our body, because a lot of times, and especially in those first, say you do start to do a little bit more light movement. Again, we're not lifting weights, we're not doing anything intense. It's very gentle pelvic tilts, hip rolls. You could even be doing some light, just floor work, mat work, back extensions, just things like that that are just super gentle and getting our body moving. And I don't look at them as always exercise. It's really more movement, right? We're getting connection through our body. We're getting that energy flowing and waking things back up. And that's where we need to start before we're actually doing exercise. And so an example could be, let's start doing just some light movement, and then, every couple days you can increase it a little bit. And same with like walking, starting really gradually, like little walks. Maybe you go for 3 walks a day and you're gradually increasing the length that you're doing that, and then you're gradually increasing how fast you're able to walk. With running though, ladies, I do recommend you hold off on running as long as you can towards that 6 months, because when you have all that relaxin in your body, you're at much higher risk for having pelvic floor dysfunction, having your uterus slide out through your vagina, or having your intestines, right, or your bladder, something slip down, because we have still so much relaxin in our body. So that is really the biggest thing. Even if your body like feels super ready and you're like, Erica, I'm just dying to go, I want to go run again, and I'm not saying you can't at all, but you've got to make sure that you're not doing it for a while. And I used to say, well, there's no like concrete answers, because everyone's bodies are different. But I would definitely make sure you're well out of those 10 plus weeks postpartum. Don't even think about starting to jog or run at 2 or 4 weeks. I hear that from moms, and honestly, it's not, for most women, it wouldn't lead to something good. So if we overdo it too soon, we risk causing more problems. Like, you might have felt great. You might have been like, oh my gosh, I have like no diastasis, my pelvic floor feels great, but you have all this relaxin. And so if we think we can then push ourselves too quick because our body thinks it's ready for it, or we think our body is ready for it, we actually can risk causing diastasis that maybe wasn't necessarily there because the tissue is still weak and lax. Same with our pelvic floor. And so those are just things I always like to bring up and caution. But as we get progressing through, and again, that's why I have designed my core rehab program, because I have personally worked with so many women on the other side of having a couple babies, and she's come to me, she's like, Erica, or I've had other trainers send their clients to me because they're like, Erica, I can't get her core on, I need you to help me do this. And in one session, I can get a lot of stuff woken up for a mom to the point where she's like, Erica, like, you've given me hope for the first time since I've had my babies. And that's why I continue to do all of this and I preach all of this. And sometimes it's hard to understand when you're not maybe dealing with pelvic floor dysfunction or diastasis or back pain and things like that. And we think, oh, we're invincible until then something happens. But I've worked with so many women in person and through my online programs and things to know, and also had lots of conversations, ladies, with OBGYNs and physical therapists that work in women's health with pelvic floor dysfunction. So the fact that there's so much going on out there and it's starting to be talked about a little bit more, like now I can say the word pelvic floor and I don't get crazy looks from women like I did say 5 years ago or so. So it's good, it's getting talked about more, but we need to talk about it more and more and more from a prevention side, because so many women end up coming to me after she's had a lot of dysfunction. And the thing is we can prevent so much of it. But I end up having so many conversations with women because she's like, Erica, but I feel great. This isn't hard enough for me. I want to do yoga. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I'm like, I know, but you have to trust the process. You have to trust that this is what your body needs, because I've done this with thousands of women to date and it works. And you'll be so grateful that we got our ego, like set our ego off to the side and say, you know what, we need to really trust that our body needs to gradually increase. And you'll be so grateful once you get on the other side, even though it took you longer than you wanted to, because there's no such thing as a quick fix. But working on the prevention is so much easier than pushing our body so hard to get our body back after baby that we end up with so much more dysfunction, right? And that's a lot of times what happens, because then I end up seeing these women and I'm like, okay, I can help you, absolutely. But part of it is we've got to take a step back, retrain our body the correct way to strengthen our pelvic floor, work on healing diastasis. And diastasis recti, ladies, side note, it does deal with our pelvic floor, because I have a lot of women that say, Erica, my pelvic floor is fine, I just want to heal my diastasis. It doesn't work that way, ladies. I don't care if you're dealing with back pain, pelvic floor dysfunction, neck pain, knee pain, ankle pain, doesn't really matter. Diastasis, we have to come and start at the same place. Doesn't matter whether you had a vaginal delivery or a cesarean delivery, right? Or you had a VBAC, it doesn't matter. We all have to come back and start at fundamentals and retrain our body, things that honestly we haven't been taught. And a lot of what I teach goes against what you've learned in fitness. I started out in fitness, so I know this. There's some questions on here I wanted to answer while I'm still on live. And then anyone who's watching the replay, please don't hesitate to put if you have a comment or a question, put it below and I'll get to them later. Amber's asking, do you think core rehab has to be done before any exercise routine? I have a 2.5 finger gap in 10 weeks postpartum. Well, it depends on like what other exercise routine you're saying. I look at core rehab as like the foundation, right? That's the fundamentals that are going to make everything else you do more effective. Whether you're walking on a regular basis, whether you're doing yoga, or you want to get back to running, the core rehab is really the fundamentals. And we have so many women that will take a lot of those fundamentals, and even though they've done the program even multiple times after each baby, and they will then take some of those fundamentals and keep them as their warm-up before they go do a regular workout. So yeah, it really is, you have to look at it as like that's the foundation, and then we build upon that. So Amber, if you had a more specific question, please don't hesitate to reach out. And can you do another exercise routine at the same time? Again, it really depends, ladies, on what you are doing, right? It can work really well, say with a yoga routine. Can you run at the same time? Because that's a common question I get. Can I keep running and doing core rehab? It depends on your body. Are you dealing with dysfunction, back pain, anything with pelvic floor diastasis? Like if you're dealing with something like that, we need to pause on the running temporarily. Because if we're doing something that's too intense for our body and we're feeling dysfunction and we're trying to do core rehab along with it, it's going to be helpful, but core rehab really shines even that much more when we pull out anything intense that could be fighting against core rehab. Hopefully that makes sense, because we want to be working with our body. And so if something we're doing that is actually part of what's causing the dysfunction, which many times it is the running, working out too hard, high intensity workouts, things like that, we've got to pull it back temporarily. Keep in mind, it's not a forever thing, because my goal for you is like, if your goal is to get back and doing high intensity workouts, doing running, whatever it might be, my goal is that we get you to where you are actually doing all of that stronger and feeling more connected and without any dysfunction. And it's absolutely possible. I mean, ladies, if you want to see testimonials, we have so many of them on the Core Rehab page, and I can put another link below too. But it's really amazing when we actually take a step back. And I know mentally that can be challenging, but it's one of those things where you don't have to do it forever. Just like you're not pregnant forever, eventually that baby's coming out. So it's kind of the same idea. There's a period of time, and everyone's bodies are different, right? Some people can start running again, jogging again sooner than others. Really just depends on what is specifically going on. You are more than welcome, if you want. I get a lot of women that will reach out to me. You just share a little bit of your story and what's going on, and I can help guide you and let you know if Core Rehab would be a good fit for you. Or if you have any other specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But it really is a life changer for so many women, which is why I love talking about it. If you have any other questions about postpartum, recovery, easing back into your workouts, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask.